Patch is in 20-ish minutes. There will be the lockdown, so it'll start at 1 p.m., it looks like. As an experiment, the Ruins map can now only be accessed by solo and duo teams. Weapon damage gap between the different grades has been reduced. Interesting. Slight damage reduction to Stiletto, Short Sword, Rapier, Horseman's Axe, Falchion, and Crossbow. Slight damage increase to Zweihander, Wizard Staff, Halberd, Felling Axe, and Bardiche. So these are lesser used, so they're trying to make them more attractive. Large damage increase to Viking Sword and Chris Dagger, because they're probably the least used weapons in the game. Higher quality lanterns have a lower move speed penalty. Rogue's Caltrop cooldown. Rogue's Caltrop's ability cool time messed me up. Reduced from 24 to 12 seconds. Caltrop's slow duration increased from 2 to 3. Caltrop's ability count reduced from 6 to 4. Rogue's final triple blue, Ruin's triple blue portal has been changed to 2 single blues. 1 blue portal in normal Goblin has been removed. Fixed an issue where the Buckler couldn't benefit from the perks related to Fighter's Shield. Fix an issue that caused too much damage to be calculated at once. Fix several known crashes. As an experiment, we removed the entrance fee for Highroller. The trading post and Highroller features are locked behind a 120-hour time gate for accounts less than 5 days old. So this is solely because of gold sellers, which I don't think hurts anybody. Not really, you know? You're going to have to wait. 120 hours, you got to wait to be able to trade. It'll cut down on gold seller spam. I'm totally cool with that. That's fine. Oh, there was like 2 more in there. There was another one down the hall. Okay. We had to get out. As an experiment, we've decided to convert the Ruins map into a duos matchmaking pool. It was one of the top requested features in the suggestion boards. We plan to continue tweaking the settings, including the starting playing counts, portal counts, map size, dark swarm timing based on your feedback. We're also experimenting with removing the entrance fee for Highroller, since going to these dungeons is already high risk without the added cost. So, I mean, like, I kind of agree. You know, if you're somebody that's proficient at the game, like, you get ahead at the game already, 50 to 100 gold ain't nothing. Like, the 50 to 100 gold is nothing. If you're somebody that isn't used to Highroller and you're trying to get in there and you're getting clapped constantly and you're trying to get built back up, you find it to be cost prohibitive to bother entering because it just means that you're going to lose your gear. And to be honest, like, people lose gear constantly in there, like Ultra Chad kits all the time, right? So I would assume that the damage will be modified on everything. If it was like a stat affix, then it didn't last time, but this isn't a stat affix. It's just modifying the existing stats of the existing weapon, so I would assume that it's retroactive on the damage. We've also started our first pass on reducing some of the gear gap between items because the issue has basically been unaddressed since alpha. Weapons could previously more than double their damage going from junk to unique quality. We've compressed the damage range so most weapons now max out around 60 to 70% damage improvement from the lowest to highest. We use the uncommon rare grade as the pivot point for the rebalance with a greater emphasis on the low end, so junk, poor, and common items will do more damage, while epic, legendary, and unique weapons will do less than before. So that's interesting too. That means that, like, crappy gray quality spell books or crappy gray quality daggers or swords or whatever should see another point or 2 of increased damage. We've also locked some game features behind time gates to make it more difficult and costly for exploiters to access these vectors of undesirable behavior before they're caught. Accounts that are less than 5 days old must wait for a timer countdown after their first login before they'll be able to access the trading post or Highroller. We apologize for any inconveniences caused to legitimate players who need to wait out the timer, but hope this will make a real impact on creating a much cleaner gaming environment. Probably not the most elegant solution in the world, but I can see the reasoning, you know? We've noticed a higher amount of teaming in the maps, especially in the Goblin Cave, since the reintroduction of VoIP. This is interesting. So, one of the biggest complaints that I have seen in, like, the Troubadour, like, general chat, like the chat that's for, like, content folks or whatever, and people that are, like, guys that have finished in the top ranks for Highroller, like on the leaderboards, they've complained about premeditated teaming. Although we want to encourage enough freedom for spontaneous player interactions and emergent behavior, we're concerned that excessive and pre-planned teaming can quickly degrade the experience for the player base. Before we take the heavy-handed approach of banning teaming outright, we will try to disincentivize undesirable behavior through in-game mechanics. Although it's a minor step, we've decided to remove one of the later appearing blue portals in the Goblin Cave to make it harder for grouped players to survive the end if they group up. We will continue to monitor this situation and make it more extreme changes if necessary. Thank you. So I wonder which stage that happens in. Maybe it's like the very last circle they pulled it. Maybe you don't see a portal in like that very, very last donut. I wonder. I'm kind of split on this one. And it would also be interesting to see like where the threshold is that they draw on people that are like premeditated teaming, because it's not that hard to Q snipe each other, right? Like the player base is, I don't know, 35, 40,000 players concurrent at any one point in time. So there's 34,000 people in right now, 20k in the dungeon. So with the player base being the size that it is, it's not impossible to be able to Q snipe people, right? We know that that's a thing that people can do. You get Q sniped all the time. So if you have guys that are proficient at Goblin and they're Q sniping each other and they do it for 15, 20 straight raids or something with the intention of teaming up and just murdering everything that comes across, like that obviously kills the gameplay loop. So you don't want that. What I want to avoid, the reason why I say I'm split on this one, what I want to avoid is guys that will be like, oh, two dudes were talking in VoIP teamed up and wrecked me on Goblin solo, and that's teaming and they should be banned. Or it happened to me 3 times today, or whatever it is. What I want to avoid is that kind of stuff where they're just like, oh, they're teaming, and and all you have is your own like anecdotal evidence, and then you end up wrecking somebody that was just like, well, I met a guy inside of the Goblin Cave and he was cool, and that happened a few times. Like, you can't tell me that at any one moment in time there aren't people, especially with VoIP involved in it, there aren't people that are trying to like make peace and work together on a solo dungeon where people are trying to survive and the loot cost is as high as it is, right? Like, it seems natural that people would try to talk themselves out of getting murdered. So what you're saying is that you don't want it to be premeditated, right? You don't want people in Discord going 3, 2, 1 click and then doing that for like a dozen runs or more, you know, to like get ahead. Like that kind of stuff I can see. What I worry about is that they're going to be using like in-raid evidence given from some guy sitting in a streamer chat someplace saying, oh, I got killed 3 times today by teamers out of your 50 runs. You know what I mean? I ran 53 raids and I got killed by teaming 4 times. So those guys, like, this is an obvious issue. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I would like to avoid. Right, the Barb decided not to murder you and pointed out a portal. Exactly, right? Like, that's a perfect example of like, I guess, quote unquote teaming, but still, like, I'm trying to farm up money. I'm not trying to engage in PvP, right? I'm naked, basically, trying to farm troll for cash, and I'm trying to avoid that conflict because I want to get out with the money. So I'm incentivized to try and like team up with other people, at least toward the tail end, so that I don't get shreked and everybody gets to get out with their loot, right? But I'm not sitting in Discord being like, all right, bro, like, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna guard the door, and I'm gonna kill the troll boss, and then I'm gonna split my gear with you. Just, you know, play bodyguard for me. Like, I'm not doing that, right? I think the teaming they're talking about is working together to wipe other players in the instance. No, the teaming that they're talking about is people that are simultaneously queuing and talking to each other on Discord to team up inside of a solo dungeon as a premeditated deal, and they're doing it repeatedly. That's the only way that you would be able to monitor that. They're not talking about like, hey, I'm cool, you're cool, let's work together, and you meet them in the dungeon and decide that you're going to work together to like combat everybody else. That part should never be an issue. If it's a random encounter and 2 people decide that they're going to team up, solo dungeon or not, like, that's the nature of the game. If you're going to do that, that should be fine. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. Aside from the portal squeeze, right? If you're doing it as a premeditated deal and you're Q sniping each other, that's where the problem comes in. Proving that is the issue. There shouldn't be anything wrong with organic teaming. Because then what you're saying is don't be social, don't be okay with other people, don't be cool, right? Don't work together toward a common goal. Don't try to get out with like more stuff that you, again, like that you're meeting inside of the run, which I think kills an entire element of the game. They can correct that with queuing systems, having multiple simultaneous lobbies. Yeah. The larger the player base, well, like, so this all comes down to player base size. The larger the player base gets, the more popular a server becomes, right? Like if US East is slammed with 15,000 people, it's going to be really hard to be able to simultaneously queue with your buddy when there's so many lobbies running at the same time. Yeah, it's just a question of whether or not like it becomes so saturated that it becomes an impossibility. At a random queue time after hitting start on solo dungeons, anywhere from 1 to 30 seconds before you start matchmaking, that would stop premeditation. Possibly, yeah. Like it wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be hard to see like the same, like if it's 2 guys, it wouldn't be hard to see like the same 2 guys going into the same runs at the same time and both like surviving and or dying at about the same time. Right? You could absolutely find those trends. That wouldn't be that hard to detect. It's just a matter of being like, is that like you could see through like the data whether or not it's natural or not. Hoping they address Bard by giving them limitations on their buffs. They did not. Bards aren't all that bad. You can learn how to play around them. I don't have any experience as a data analyst. I mean, I just understand how it works. I mean, I've analyzed, like, I analyze data in finance, but not in this regard. Plus, physical damage has got to get nerfed. Plus, weapon damage needs to get nerfed. I don't think there's any shocker there. Yeah, I don't really see a problem with it, if I'm being honest.